Newcastle United have won 6 league matches on the bounce in all competitions. This one was probably the ugliest of all of them. Let's talk more about it. Hello everybody and welcome out to the Newcastle United Digest, the channel delivering you Toon content in bite-sized chunks. And this episode will be all about Newcastle's win against Spurs on Saturday, January the 4th. There was a lot of talk about what was going on off the pitch before this match, particularly in the Spurs camp. Tottenham had a massive stomach bug outbreak in their camp, and it hit a lot of the first-team players. In fact, I mentioned this in my short late on Friday that Tottenham only had 7 senior players train on Friday, the day before a match. And it showed in the starting lineup when they had several changes in the lineup, including goalkeeper Brandon Austin subbing in for Fraser Forster. This is Brandon Austin's very first match for Spurs, despite being at the club for 6 years. To date, he only had 19 professional matches under his belt. Today was his 20th. And this is probably the biggest stage of them all. And fair play to him. He played pretty well, given the circumstances. More on that later. On the flip side, Newcastle had some good reinforcements come in the form of giant center back Sven Botman. This is his first match back in 10 months after tearing his ACL and has rehab assignments. It looks like they've gone well. And yeah, he was a little rusty, but it was good to see him back and playing and getting back into the flow of the game. And Spurs definitely tested him early in that first half, where they went up 1-0 in the 3rd minute of play, taking a page right out of Newcastle's book. Fair play to Pedro Porro, who got a wonderful cross into the box. And Solanke did a really good job of getting goal side on Botman and taking advantage of his rustiness, because Botman definitely was out of position on that and probably should have done a little bit better on the play. But you know what? It's his first game back. When you see a player coming back from a long-term injury like that, of course, any team is going to put some pressure on him and test him very early on. Unfortunately, Botman failed that test. It didn't take long for Newcastle to bounce back, because in the 6-minute play, Anthony Gordon got a goal back and made it 1-1. This was yet another goal where the press worked, and it worked very well. Joelinton intercepted a pass. It was very controversial by Spurs fan standards, and it went up. And the ball bounced straight to Bruno. He found Gordon streaking. He took 1 or 2 touches and buried the ball far right post. And just like that, it was 1-1. The controversy was where the ball hit Joelinton. It hit him right on the hand, but there was no opportunity for Joelinton to get out of the way. This is one of those situations where it was clearly ball to hand, not hand to ball. Yes, it sucks that he got an advantage. And in the moment, had this happened to Newcastle, I'd be a little frustrated and a little angry. But when I look back on it, I'd probably say, yeah, that was ball to hand. By the letter of the law, that's not a handball. Fair play. And it's 1-1 for us. VAR did check this goal, and it was quickly cleared, and we moved on. Despite where they are in the table, Spurs is probably one of our biggest challenges because they play the most similar style to us. They like to press high. They like to run through midfield very quickly. They love to counter. And they love being aggressive on challenges in midfield. And our middle three were not up to the task today, especially in this first half. I thought that Bruno and Tonali took 20 or 25 minutes to just wake up, because the first 20 or 25 minutes, Spurs just ran right through us without any issues. And it was really worrying to see, because this is very unlike our midfield, especially once we found this balance. This was an off half for us, and I really, really worried about this. And even down the stretch of the first half, despite creating more chances and getting that second goal late in the first half, they still weren't at 100%. Here in the U.S., Robbie Mustoe on NBC described them as playing in second gear. And that's the best way anybody could have described Newcastle's play in the first half. And the second half was a continuation on a theme that started in the first half but wasn't as prevalent. And that was a lot of refereeing decisions did not go our way. In fact, they were comical how bad they went in our way. There were 2 instances where there were headshots to 2 of our players, and there weren't even fouls called. The first one was a challenge on Dubravka, where he gets a knee to the head, he goes down, and Spurs still get a chance to take a shot before referee Bobby Madley even blows his whistle. That play should have been whistled dead immediately, especially if it's for a head injury. I'm not even sure it was a foul or if he just blew the whistle because of a head injury. Even still, When you're going for a 50-50 ball with a goalkeeper and you knee him in the head, that should not be just a foul. That should be at least a yellow card. I'm sorry. There's no excuse for that. Going down to the opposite end of the pitch in the second half, Anthony Gordon was going for a ball, and he gets elbowed in the nose and goes down right away. Bobby Madley waved this one off. In fact, he only went back and blew the whistle because he was informed that it was a head injury. You can't have a head injury in the penalty area and not call a penalty. It's one or the other. It's either a penalty because of a head injury, or there's no injury and it's not a foul. This is clear as day. And even the VAR referee did not take a very close look at this. It should have been 100% a penalty because this would have been called a foul anywhere else on the pitch. In fact, Sven Botman got penalized on James Maddison for the exact same thing just outside the penalty area, even though James Maddison ran right into Botman. The bias in this game was ridiculous. You look at the number of cards that were thrown for Newcastle, and Spurs only got their first yellow card in injury time. When throughout the entire game, whenever we tried to counter, quick foul, no yellow. Quick foul, no yellow. And they kept doing it because they kept getting away with it. It slowed us down, and they took full advantage of it. Had we been doing the same thing, in fact, we did do it a couple of times, and we got booked. There weren't a whole lot of opportunities for us in the second half. Other than that, well, penalty shout. And it looked, again, like Eddie Howe was trying to back it up and try to preserve a one-goal lead. And that was really worrying. I think a lot of Newcastle fans, like myself, still have PTSD from parking the bus with one-goal leads with lesser skilled managers at the helm, and we get broken down pretty easily. So a lot of Newcastle fans, like myself, have been around for a while. We have long memories, and unfortunately, they're not going away. The other thing that I thought was really puzzling was the choice of subs that Eddie Howe had, and it made further sense when you realized that Eddie Howe was going to preserve the one-goal lead versus trying to get a third and shut the game down. In the 70th minute, I thought to myself, I thought that this would be a good time to bring on Willock for Joe Linton. Joe Linton was looking a little gassed, and I thought adding a little bit of extra pace would have made things a little bit more wide open for us. It would have allowed us to maybe get some more opportunities to score a goal and make it 3-1 and put this game to bed, but that was not the case. In fact, this was another game where Eddie Howe was very slow to react with his subs. Tottenham made a triple substitution early on in the second half in the 62nd minute, including Son and Maddison coming on and adding some reinforcements to a side that desperately needed them. We did a good job of holding them off, but they still got some good opportunities. In the 78th minute, you had Anthony Gordon come off for Harvey Barnes. That's a like-for-like sub. That makes a lot of sense. Anthony Gordon played well. He was probably bothered by his bloody nose. Understandably so. Fair play to him for playing through it. But when you've got a bloody nose and you're only breathing through one of your nostrils, it's understandable where you're not playing at your best. The next sub period wasn't until the 86th minute. One of them was Jacob Murphy for Sean Longstaff. That was a little puzzling. I'm not sure why he did that unless you're just trying to add more midfield players and park the bus and go to a 4-4-2 and have Isak and Barnes playing off each other. Until you have Alexander Isak coming off for Joe Willock? Really? That's a little odd. So all of this for 5 midfielders and Harvey Barnes as your lone striker. So you go to a 4-5-1 to park the bus and see this one out. Thankfully, we were able to hold them off and keep the 3 points, but not after 13 minutes of stoppage time. That was 3 minutes in addition to the 10 that were already put up for the 2 head injuries and the VAR check on Anthony Gordon's penalty shout. With all is said and done, Newcastle remain in 5th place and remain 1 point behind Chelsea after they drew 1-1 to Crystal Palace. Right now, Chelsea does have the superior goal differential, so it will take a win for us and a Chelsea loss or draw in the next match week for us to leapfrog them into 4th. And now let's move on to my ratings by position. And we'll start with Marty Dubravka in goal, and I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10. Dubs was hung out to dry in the first goal, but the rest of his game was excellent. In fact, this was the first goal that Newcastle has conceded in over 6 hours of football. That's incredible. So fair play to them, and the streak continues. So now they have another 87 minutes of scoreless football to build on going into the next 2 cup matches and the next match week in a couple weeks. And the defense, they need to improve a little bit. They got a 7.5 out of 10 for this game. Botman looked a little bit rusty on the first goal, and they did concede a lot of corners. They bent, but they didn't break, and they did have to rely on Dubravka to make a couple of big saves to keep this game at 2-1. Where a lot of improvement needs to happen is in midfield. They get a 6 out of 10 for this game. Bruno and Tonali for most of this game were mostly absent, other than 2 good chances in the first half, including the Isak goal. They didn't do a whole lot in the press. They were decent on defense, but they were completely overrun, especially in the first half. This is one of those instances where you need to learn from it, improve, and move on. And thankfully, the rest of the team played solid enough where we didn't leak a lot of goals, unlike the game against Brentford. The forwards, they're going to get a 7 out of 10 for this game. I thought the press could have been a little bit more effective, and they did miss a couple of chances that were gimmies. The most glaring one was in the first half where Murphy made a perfect cross. Isak half tried to go for the goal, and then at the last second decided to try to lay it off to Anthony Gordon. And when he did that, it took the ball out of Gordon's path and led to a goal kick. Had he just not touched the ball, Anthony Gordon's on the far post and he buries it for the double. If Isak just touches it, he gets a goal and he gets the double. And this would have been 3-1, and this would have been a very different game to talk about, especially in the second half. But they didn't, and they didn't capitalize on other chances, so they get a 7 out of 10. On set pieces, I'm going to give them a 6 out of 10. They were solid on the defensive side, defending all 9 corner kicks very well. But on the offensive side, I thought they were a little bit poor. Obviously, they were doing a lot to try and test the debutant goalkeeper. But after the first 2 or 3 corner kicks where he stands his ground and does well, you got to change it up. Try a short corner. Try going to the far post away from the 6-yard box. Try to get a flick back in. Do something different. Don't just try to do the same thing over and over again, especially when it's not working. Do something different. Change it up. End of rant. And the subs, I'm going to give Eddie Howe's subs a 4 out of 10. If you're looking at it from the perspective of, Eddie Howe's just trying to close this game out, so he's just going to add on more bodies in midfield to shore it up and park the bus a little bit, fine. But this isn't how we play mostly. This is not how we normally play. We normally play on the front foot, full throttle football. This was not full throttle football. We should have been trying to go for the third goal, try to put this game to bed in the second half, but instead we played more defensive, and it showed in our subs. Overall, this game is a 6.75 out of 10. Eddie clearly chose the route of clinging onto a 1-goal lead down the stretch and giving heart palpitations to Newcastle fans everywhere. I thought that this is a game that could have been a lot better played, especially when you think about the sickness issues that Spurs had during the week and how many players were out. They should have been testing this team a lot more. Instead, they got run over. There's no excuse for that in my book. Thankfully, we hit them where it counts on the score sheet, and that's really all that matters. So I'll take an ugly 3 points over a pretty 1 point or 0 points all day long. And that will do it for this episode of the Newcastle United Digest. I hope this was an episode you enjoyed, and if you made it this far, be sure to hit that like button. And if you're not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button and also hit the notification bell, so that way you don't have to go searching for us later on, and you will get a notification anytime I release a new video. So I will be back after the Arsenal match to give you my reaction for that game, and then we'll be on to the FA Cup next week against Bromley. I'm looking forward to both of these games for very different reasons. I'm hoping that we can at least stay close for Arsenal. And if we can do that, I believe that when we go to the second leg against them at St. James Park, it will be a fortress that we can use to our advantage and secure a spot in yet another Carabao Cup final. Until next time, away the lads. Bye for now.